Alright, how's it going, guys? So today I thought that I would give you a little bit of an insight into my personal history with playing the guitar. So I've been playing on and off for about 13 years now. I first started back in grade school. One summer some of my friends decided to take lessons from the music teacher at the school, so I figured, why not? We'll give it a shot. So I ended up taking lessons for about 2 or 3 years, and that's actually the only formal instruction I've ever gotten. The kinds of things that she taught me were pretty much the first stuff that everybody learns. She was a liturgical musician, so she's taught you kind of just basic, strum patterns, muting these strings and strumming, that kind of thing. And she also taught exclusively on acoustic. And this actually is the same guitar that I started learning on. Apparently when I was starting out, I showed promise, I guess, or something, because my parents actually decided to give me a pretty nice guitar, so I haven't really had a need to replace it. And then the kinds of chords that she taught us were basic kinds of things, A, D, G. One other thing she did teach us about, though, which is kind of interesting, I think, is how to use a capo. And I just think this is funny because this is one of the first things that I ever learned about with a guitar. And you look at a bunch of like rock and metal guitarists nowadays, they don't even know what this is, which is kind of funny just because you don't really use it for that kind of music. But whenever she would play like liturgical stuff, they wouldn't really detune their guitars. If they ever needed a pitch change, they would slap a capo on and go higher. So then, normally you've got, and that becomes, which is actually a kind of interesting tool to use. I do use that sometimes nowadays in my cover videos. That's kind of the extent of what I learned from her. And I thought it was fun at first, it was something different, something new, but after a couple of years of that, and there's only so much you can do with that, or at least that I knew of at the time. Obviously, I've since learned that there's tons you can do with acoustic, not just, basic strumming chords. As you've also seen in my cover videos, I do use the acoustic pretty frequently. So after I left that school, I didn't really play that much anymore for a few years. So then a couple years later, I got my first electric guitar, and that kind of, got me back into it a little bit. My first electric was actually one of those Spectrum starter guitars, and it wasn't, a bad guitar. It wasn't great, but it got the job done. It was also an S-type, just like this, and I guess that might be one reason why I prefer S-type guitars. It's kind of what I learned on, I got used to it. But when I first got the thing, the action on it, I swear the strings were like a 1/4 inch away from the fretboard when you got down to these higher frets. And I didn't know anything about setups or anything like that, so I just tried to play it like that for the longest time, and obviously it was awful. But then once I got the setup dialed in, I started, learning some basic rock songs like pretty much everybody does when they're starting out. And the first thing I actually learned to play on electric guitar, I can still remember to this day, was the intro riff to One by Metallica. I thought that was so cool to be able to play something like that, coming from a background of only playing full strummed chords on acoustic, to play an actually recognizable song that people know. I was also into a little bit, softer music back then than I am now, and one of the other first riffs that I really fell in love with was Money for Nothing by Dire Straits. Actually got props from one of the guitar store workers one time for playing that in the store, because he said it's something he's actually never heard before, which is kind of funny. And from there, I started learning a few songs here and there, and kind of playing on and off again for a few years. And I improved a little bit, not a ton. I didn't really play regularly enough to actually practice or anything, and so I kind of stepped away from it for a little while. And then once I went to college, I actually brought my guitar with me. That was actually my first Strat, the Mexican one that was in my channel icon for quite a while. I guess since it was always right there in the same room as me in my dorm, I kind of picked it up more often and practiced more, and actually started improving a little bit to the point where I thought that I might be able to start my own guitar channel, which I did sophomore year of college. And starting the channel really got me to practice more regularly because I have to learn a new song every week. So I can probably credit most of my practice to that. And it's pretty plain to see looking back at a bunch of my old videos that, you know, my playing was not the best when I started out. Not long after the start of the channel was when I bought my Les Paul. That kind of encouraged me a little bit. It was a little bit easier to play. And this is also the guitar that I learned a lot about alternate tunings on, which I definitely need to know nowadays because I cover so many different songs and it doesn't seem like any of them are in the same tuning. And I can still remember recording one video in particular. It was Shinedown's Cut the Chord, and that song introduced me to the concept of drop tuning, which if you notice in my recent videos is the kind of tuning that I prefer using. Actually right now this is tuned to drop C sharp, so we're going to use one of the tools we picked up early on so that I can demonstrate Cut the Chord for you. And things kind of naturally progress from there, you know. You learn more complex songs, get into heavier music, start detuning more. Eventually I learned about, you know, changing strings, setup, pickups and whatnot, and eventually end up with this guitar, which is kind of the one that I've always wanted. And being a fan of bands, you know, like Metallica, Five Finger Death Punch, you get a Strat and then you end up playing music like this on it. Yeah, I've essentially pretty much learned by making the cover videos that I upload to my channel. So yeah, moral of the story, you want to get better at guitar? Make a YouTube channel. Hope you guys found that at least a little bit interesting, and thanks. Have a good day.